So let's talk about one of the biggest paradoxes in modern history, the Treaty of Versailles. This was the document that was supposed to guarantee peace forever, to end the war to end all wars. But, as we'll see, it kind of did the exact opposite, and might have actually paved the way for an even bigger, deadlier war.
Okay, so try to picture it. The year is 1919. World War I is finally over. We're talking about a conflict that absolutely shattered a generation, killed over 16 million people, and toppled 4 massive empires. The winners all get together in Paris, and they have this monumental task: build a new world from the ashes, a world where this kind of catastrophe could never, ever happen again. You can just imagine the sense of hope in the air.
And yet, flash forward just 2 decades. 20 years, that's it. And suddenly German tanks are smashing into Poland, and the entire continent is dragged right back into the darkness of another world war. That permanent peace? It barely lasted a generation. Which brings us to the big question, right? What went so horribly wrong? How could a treaty that was all about securing peace become one of the main reasons that fueled the rise of the Nazis and kicked off World War II? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down.
You know, the trouble really started before the ink was even dry. Because the Paris Peace Conference wasn't some unified team effort. Not at all. It was a total clash of egos and national interests, and it was all dominated by 3 very different men.
At its heart, it really came down to 2 completely different ideas about what peace should even look like. On one side, you've got America's Woodrow Wilson. He's the idealist, talking about a fair peace, self-determination, and creating a League of Nations to talk out future problems. But on the other side, you have Georges Clemenceau of France. I mean, his country had been invaded by Germany twice in his own lifetime. He wasn't interested in ideals. He wanted security. He wanted revenge. He wanted to make sure Germany could never, ever threaten France again. And then, stuck right in the middle, you had Britain's David Lloyd George, who was desperately trying to find some kind of middle ground.
So what they ended up with wasn't a clear, coherent plan. It was this messy, awkward compromise between Wilson's dream of a brand new world and Clemenceau's desire for an old-school, punishing peace. And that fundamental conflict was just baked right into the DNA of the treaty from the very start.
So what did this messy compromise actually look like for Germany? Well, the final treaty basically dropped 4 massive burdens on them, and every single one was designed to cripple the nation in one way or another.
And when you put them all together, losing huge chunks of territory, having your military dismantled, being forced to take all the blame, and then getting hit with a crippling bill, it was just a systemic blow to Germany's economy, its power, and its pride.
Let's dig into each one.
First up, territory. Germany lost about 13% of its land. This wasn't just empty fields either. We're talking about the industrial heartland of Alsace-Lorraine, which went back to France. Huge areas that became part of the new nation of Poland, and every single one of its overseas colonies. The map of Europe was literally redrawn, and millions of ethnic Germans suddenly found themselves living as minorities in brand new countries.
Second, its military was basically erased. The German army, once the most powerful in the world, was capped at just 100,000 men. That's barely enough to manage internal policing. And they were flat out forbidden from having an air force, any tanks, or any submarines. A nation that built its identity on military strength was left almost completely defenseless.
Third, and this one really stung, was Article 231. It's known as the War Guilt Clause, and it forced Germany to accept 100% of the blame for starting the war and for all the death and destruction that followed. This wasn't just a legal technicality, it was a deep moral humiliation that the entire country absolutely hated. And finally, the bill, the reparations. The financial cost was just astronomical. Germany was ordered to pay $33 billion. To put that in perspective, that's about $450 billion in today's money. This was a sum so huge, it was designed to keep the German economy on its knees for decades.
So you can imagine what all of this did inside Germany, right? It was an absolute catastrophe. Not just for the economy, but for the country's politics. It completely poisoned the well for Germany's brand new democracy before it even had a chance to get started.
So to even try to pay off these massive debts, the government just started printing more money. And the result? Hyperinflation on a scale that's hard to even imagine. By 1923, German money was literally worthless. People's entire life savings, gone, wiped out overnight. And that kind of economic desperation, well, it creates a perfect breeding ground for political rage.
So Germany's first real attempt at democracy, the Weimar Republic, was immediately tied to this treaty that everybody hated. From day one, in the minds of many Germans, democracy didn't mean freedom or hope. It meant defeat, it meant poverty, and it meant national humiliation.
This gave rise to this incredibly powerful and dangerous lie, the stab-in-the-back myth. Nationalists on the far right started claiming that the German army was never actually defeated in the field. Instead, they said it was betrayed, stabbed in the back by its own politicians, the guys they called the November criminals who signed the treaty. And this myth was used over and over again to attack the legitimacy of the democratic government.
And this constant environment of crisis, of anger, of humiliation, it created the perfect opening for political extremists, for people who came along and promised a very simple solution. Just tear up the treaty and we'll make Germany proud again.
And, of course, nobody exploited this anger better than Adolf Hitler. The Treaty of Versailles was the absolute centerpiece of his entire political message. In speech after speech, he just hammered on its injustice, promising to shatter the chains of Versailles and restore German greatness. Now, the treaty didn't create Hitler, but it sure created the perfect storm for his message of hate and revenge to find an audience.
And as soon as he got power, that's exactly what he did. One by one, he just tore the treaty to shreds. In 1935, he announced Germany was rearming. In 1936, he marched troops back into the demilitarized Rhineland. In 1938, he annexed Austria. And then, finally, in 1939, he invaded Poland, and the whole system that was built at Versailles came crashing down into the Second World War.
And I think this reveals the real ultimate lesson of Versailles. A peace that's built on just punishing and humiliating the loser, one that offers no path for them to recover and rejoin the world. Well, that's not stable. It's not really peace at all. It's just a pause between wars.
So in the end, we're left with this massive question that historians still argue about today. Was the Treaty of Versailles just too harsh? Or was its fatal flaws something much deeper? Did it fail because it tried to build a lasting peace by crushing and humiliating a major power, instead of actually trying to heal the wounds of war? It's a question that would echo for the rest of the 20th century.